Friday the 13th, a day that strikes fear into the hearts of many, sending even the most confident into a spiral of superstition and dread. But what is it about this day that makes it so ominous? Is it truly cursed, or has history and folklore simply crafted a chilling narrative around it? Let's uncover the origins, the myths, and the psychology of Friday the 13th. To understand Friday the 13th, we must first break down the two elements, Friday and the number 13. Let's start with Friday. Throughout history, Friday has been considered an unlucky day. For early Christians, Friday was the day of Christ's crucifixion, forever associating it with death and despair. It was a day of mourning, a day of endings. But it wasn't just in Christianity. In Norse mythology, Friday is named after Frigg, the goddess of love and fertility, but also a figure associated with witchcraft and secrets. Some believe that her power on Fridays could bring about misfortune, particularly when combined with the next element, 13. For millennia, the number 12 has been considered a symbol of completeness. 12 months in the year, 12 hours on the clock, 12 gods of Olympus, 12 signs of the zodiac. But 13 has always been seen as an irregular number, breaking the cycle, a number that doesn't fit. This made 13 a number associated with chaos, imbalance, and danger. In many cultures, 13 was seen as unlucky because it disrupts the natural order. In fact, the fear of the number 13 has a name, triskaidekaphobia, and when you combine this fear with the negativity surrounding Fridays, you have the perfect storm. But what about witches? Oh yes, witches have a long and complicated history with Friday the 13th. In the medieval period, witches were often depicted as being in league with dark forces, and Fridays were considered the best day for casting spells. It's no wonder that, in witch hunts and trials, Friday the 13th was seen as a time when witches could perform their most powerful and dangerous rituals. Take the infamous Witches Sabbath. A gathering invented for the persecution of women, this was rumoured to take place on Friday the 13th, where supposed witches would gather under the cover of night to perform dark rites with Master Satan. This association of witches and Friday the 13th solidified the day as one of fear and evil. In 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of the Knights Templar on a Friday the 13th, and several significant disasters have occurred on Friday the 13th, reinforcing the day's unlucky reputation in popular culture. The 1980 horror film Friday the 13th popularized the superstition and added to the cultural fear surrounding the date. But why do we still fear Friday the 13th today? It's not just about old legends and witches. There's a psychological reason for this enduring fear. Psychologists believe that superstitions like this one are rooted in cognitive biases, specifically our tendency to look for patterns even in random events. When something unlucky happens on Friday the 13th, our brains make a connection. We remember that bad thing, and over time, it reinforces the idea that the day itself is cursed. This is known as confirmation bias. We look for evidence that confirms our belief, ignoring any contrary experiences. So, is Friday the 13th really cursed, or have we simply created a narrative around it? The answer lies somewhere in between. While the day may not hold any inherent supernatural power, the fear that surrounds it can be very real. This fear, rooted in ancient superstitions and psychological mechanisms, can influence our actions and beliefs, even if we don't realize it. As witches, we often talk about the power of intention. If you believe a day is cursed, you might find that it becomes so for you. But if you choose to embrace Friday the 13th, to use the energy of the day for transformation and reflection, you may find that it holds power of a different kind. Perhaps Friday the 13th isn't a day to fear, but a day to reflect on our own shadows, to challenge the superstitions that bind us. In many magical traditions, Friday is a day of personal power, and the number represents change, rebirth, and transformation. In astrology, the planet Venus is associated with Friday, symbolizing love, beauty, and creativity. In tarot, the number 13 is associated with the card of death, which signifies transformation and new beginnings rather than literal death. The fear we hold around this day might actually be an invitation for us to break free from old patterns and step into new growth. The ancient Egyptians believed the number 13 was lucky because it signified ascension to the afterlife. So, next time Friday the 13th rolls around, don't hide under the covers, embrace it. Use it to challenge your fears, to let go of the old and welcome in the new. After all, the true power of any day lies not in the number or the calendar, but in how we choose to approach it. Who knows, maybe Friday the 13th is your day to change your fate. Just remember, no matter what happens, you don't have to fear it. After all, as witches, we know the power of embracing our fears and turning them into something magical.